an ABC News special report.
Hello, this is a special news report from your special news people here at a special location.
We are going over the Harlem Renaissance.
Specifically, poet James Weldon Johnson, one of the most impacting poets throughout the Harlem Renaissance.
James Weldon Johnson was born in Jacksonville, Florida. After graduating from Atlanta University, he created arguably his most famous poem. It was called Lift Every Voice and Sing. This poem has now become the Negro national anthem. Throughout his free time, he has also published many books. Out of his 8 total books, his most famous was The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. His book, Self-Determining Haiti, showed now how he wished for Haiti to become a more successful country.
Johnson contributed to the Book of American Negro Poetry, which inspired the Harlem Renaissance generation to establish firmly an African-American literary tradition in the United States of America. He was the author of Black Manhattan, published in 1930, a history of African-American people in New York City, primarily in Harlem, from the 17th century through to the 20th. He then got married to Grace Nail Johnson.
His wife participated in numerous civil rights groups and fought for rights of equality for men and women of color and for equal pay, which was significantly lower for blacks, and she eventually became a tutor for young blacks.
Johnson received the Spring Arm Medal from the NAACP in 1925 for outstanding achievement by an American Negro. He then received the W.E.B. Du Bois Prize from Negro Literature in 1933. His last book was called Negro Americans, What Now?, which targeted many black people, which he encouraged better themselves and show the whites that blacks are also a part of America. Unfortunately, at the age of 67, in 1938, Johnson passed away.
On the Harlem Renaissance, what do you think of poet James Weldon Johnson?
Well, I thought that James Weldon Johnson was one of the most impactful poets in the Harlem Renaissance because of his critical, biographical, and historical poems.
Johnson had a talent for persuading different people of ideological agendas. They all worked for the same goal. That made him the manifestation of segregation.
Well, having his poem being made into the Negro national anthem is a very big achievement. I feel like James Weldon Johnson is one of the best poets that affected the Harlem Renaissance and how people define it today.
One of his most famous literary works was the book God's Trombones, 7 Negro Sermons in Verse. It was a collection of poetic sermons. The first 7 verses were called The Creation. 50 Years and Other Poems was his first book, published in 1917. The book contained poems he had written dating back to his years at Atlanta University. It had both poems of racial meaning and amusing dialect poems. Poets will remember him as the Renaissance Man because of his countless talents in writing and the progress he made to show blacks that they could contribute to writing too, not just whites. The purpose of all of his books was to show the white people that the blacks were going through very hardships every day. And it paid off in 1987 when Johnson became the first African American to be admitted to a Florida bar. After it all had been said and done, James Weldon Johnson had written many poems, novels, some songs, and some operas, and he was a very talented and artistic man. And this has been a special report from your special location from your special news people here at ABC News. Thank you.
His wife participated in numerous civil rights groups and fought for rights of equality for men and women of color and for equal pay.
Back on the Harlem Renaissance, what do you think of poet James Weldon Johnson?
Well, James Weldon Johnson was a very impactful poem through his collection of critical, biographical, and historical poems.
He had a talent for persuading people of different ideological agendas and to work for a common goal. This made him the living manifestation of segregation.
Having his poem made into the Negro National Anthem is a great achievement. I feel like he's one of the best poets in the Harlem Renaissance.